Hey everybody and welcome to Breaking Biotech. Thanks for being with me here today. My name is Matt and if you like the show you can help out by clicking the like or subscribe button. You can also donate using the Patreon link in the description below. So I'm glad to be back and I've got a great show for everybody today. I'd like to introduce John Bencich, CEO from Achieve Life Sciences. John, welcome to the show.
Hi, Matt. Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I could get you on because the company's got some pretty exciting stuff coming up soon. The phase 3 data that's about to come out. So I thought it'd be a great opportunity to have you on and talk about Achieve and all the exciting things you guys are doing. So I think the first thing that might be helpful is if you could give some background on Achieve Life Sciences.
Sure. Yeah. So at Achieve, we're focused on the development and ultimately commercialization of a drug called Cytisinicline as an aid to smoking cessation and treatment for nicotine addiction. And it's a bit of an unusual compound because it has a long history behind it. This is a drug that's been extensively researched over the years.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it's a drug that's on the market in Central and Eastern Europe today through our partner.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also a drug that's never been available in any major
Mm-hmm.
markets. So we were able to get an exclusive license and supply agreement in place for the compound from the originators, a company called Sopharma. And the goal really is to bring this drug first and foremost to the US and then ultimately take it to the rest of the world. And so we have rights to the entire globe outside of 17 countries, predominantly in Central and Eastern Europe, where Sopharma currently sells the product.
Okay. Awesome, great. And I think the first thing that came to my mind when I started looking at the company was smokers. Like I don't even know anybody who smokes cigarettes anymore. Although I do have a ton of people in my life that vape. But when I looked at the data, it's like still 31 million Americans smoke today, which is a huge addressable market. But I wonder if you could tell the viewers about of those 31 million, how many are trying to quit and how many are successful.
Yeah, so this is, you're right. It's well over 30 million here in the US that continue to smoke. On a global basis, it's over a billion. This is the leading cause of preventable death is smoking and related
Mm-hmm.
diseases. So it continues to be really a massive, massive addressable market.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at, how patients kind of cycle through, there's a couple things. One, nicotine addiction is really, really difficult to quit. Most smokers have some desire to quit.
Mm-hmm.
About half make a quit attempt annually, but the success rates are really low, single digits. And
Yeah.
so, this is one that folks will cycle through treatment options to try to ultimately be abstinent over the long term.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at in the U.S., the portion of the smokers that are actually making quit attempts is just under 20 million
Wow.
annually. And when you look at, kind of diving deeper from there, the reality is that very few are getting treated with the available therapeutics that are on the
Mm-hmm.
market today, at least the two oral therapeutics. Chantix, which has been the most
Mm-hmm.
successful smoking cessation product, has been treating less than 4% of the overall market. So we think
Mm-hmm.
there's a real opportunity here to expand that.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think, and I think, we look at the side effect profile for Chantix, it's obviously not all the way there, although right now it's tough for new patients to even get it. But is it the side effect profile that you think what limits people from continuing with Chantix?
That's what we've heard. We've done work with smokers, and that was the number one reason for either not taking the two available therapies or dropping off early.
Mm-hmm.
And for reference, when you look at Chantix in particular, it's a 3-month course of treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And what we see is that only 50% of patients will refill month two, and it's less than a quarter will refill month three. And again, the number one reason given for that is tolerability. So we think,
Really?
in this indication in particular, the safety and tolerability really is critical. This is
Yeah.
not oncology where patients are willing to put themselves through just about anything to get out the other side.
Yeah.
This is more elective. Frankly, people like to smoke. They're
Yeah.
often getting pressured from a spouse or a loved one to make a quit attempt.
Yeah.
And if they feel terrible on the medication, I think it just makes it easier to just give up on the quit attempt and go back to smoking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but when it comes to sort of the other options, I guess, does nicotine replacement rank as like higher proportion of the market of quit smoke people who are trying to quit?
Yeah, so if you look at the available options, so you have nicotine replacement therapy. So this comes in various forms: patches, gums, lozenges.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these are available over the counter.
Right.
So when you think about the journey of a smoker looking to quit, it may start cold, trying cold turkey. That works for some. Most people will relapse. They'll often, kind of next step go to picking up some form of NRT over the counter. That's not terribly effective. It often just leads to substitute addictions where people will use those on a longer term basis. My uncle quit now, I think just about 4 years ago. He still uses a nicotine lozenge on a daily basis. So I think that's pretty common. Outside of NRT, then you go into the fact that there's only two non-nicotine approved therapeutics, Chantix being one of them. The other oral therapeutic is a drug called Zyban, which is a repurposed depression drug, also known as Wellbutrin. Again, not terribly effective, also comes with a number of side effects along with it. So, the options are limited. Chantix was the last approved therapeutic, and that was over 15 years ago. So, we think there really is a pent-up demand for additional treatment options in this space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tend to agree. It's crazy that it's been so long that there's been another drug that's come along. But we have cytisinicline, so that's exciting. And can you share with us, how does the efficacy of cytisinicline compare to Chantix or anything else that's available? Many biotech startups don't think that they have the time or money to protect their data. Without a dedicated IT team, data management is everyone's problem. Scientists find themselves redoing work and carrying out tasks outside of their expertise. Management finds themselves struggling to find funding and meet regulatory requirements. Don't let your company set itself up for failure. InfoPathways provides data management, cybersecurity, and technology compliance services for life science firms of any size. InfoPathways specializes in clean rooms, vivariums, GMP or GLP compliant facilities, as well as BSL 1 through 4. No environment or regulation is too complex for InfoPathways. For more information, go to infopathways.com or call 410-751-9929 to learn more. And it's definitely something that is outside my expertise. I want to get to the science. So if you're a biotech startup, think about using InfoPathways for all of your IT needs. Go to infopathways.com or call 410-751-9929. And I want to thank them so much for being a sponsor for the show.
Yeah, so I think the best way to look at efficacy is to do a comparison using odds ratios, which is effectively the effect of the drug over placebo. I think it mutes a lot of the differences, trial design differences, things like that over the years. And the Cochrane group out of the UK does a lot of great meta-analysis looking at this. And there's been hundreds of trials on the existing therapies out in the public domain today. And so when we look at kind of where the existing treatments fall on the spectrum, nicotine replacement therapy and bupropion are just under an odds ratio of 2. So about 2 times better than placebo or baseline care, which is often just behavioral support alone. So that is kind of the low end of the bar. Chantix has been just under 3, an odds ratio of 3 over time. So a bit better. It's definitely the most efficacious product out there. But with that being said, 4 out of 5 patients will have relapsed 6 months post initiating therapy. So there's, even with the most efficacious product, most patients will ultimately relapse, unfortunately. What we've seen with cytisinicline historically is an odds ratio of just under 4. And there's a wide range. It's been between 3 and 7, but it's been, at least as good as what we've seen at the top end of the scale, if not better. There's been 3 large investigator-led phase 3-like trials over the last decade that have either been published in the New England Journal or the Journal Addiction. And what we've seen in those is one showed superiority over placebo, so just under 3.5 times better than placebo at getting patients to quit. Another was a head-to-head against nicotine replacement therapy, designed as a non-inferiority trial, but showed that we were actually superior to getting patients to quit over nicotine replacement therapy. And then the most recent trial was the first ever head-to-head directly against Chantix. And in this, we showed we were at least as good in terms of efficacy as Chantix, and we were actually trending towards superiority in terms of the abstinence rates. And it was about a 50% improvement over Chantix that was trending towards significance. So we think we're in the right place from a market perspective. What we hear from the thought leaders in this space is that the clinically meaningful benefit is about an odds ratio of 2. So anything 2 or better is clearly relevant in this setting to give patients another option.
Right. And so in terms of what we can look forward to in the phase 3s that are coming out, we're hoping for non-inferiority, obviously, and maybe slightly superior to Chantix.
Yeah, so the trial we're running right now, ORCA-2, is a placebo-controlled trial, so we're not comparing ourselves to any of the other therapies. This is not required from a regulatory perspective for approval. So we feel pretty good based on the historical data sets we've seen that we will be able to meet that bar.
Okay. And then could you touch a little bit on safety? We mentioned it before, but Cytisinicline has a much better safety profile than Chantix or Zyban, right?
Yep. Yeah, this is really one of the critical differences that we've seen historically around the product. With Chantix, which I think we compare ourselves to quite a bit, with Chantix, you get about a 28% rate of nausea and vomiting, and that typically happens in the first couple weeks of therapy, which is why Chantix starts with half a dose for the first week and titrates up. Historically, in the way that the drug is presented on the market in Europe today, we start at a high dose and titrate down, yet we see single-digit rates across everything, across kind of the typical, nausea, sleep disturbances, insomnia, and headache. With Chantix, you do see double-digit rates of abnormal dreams and nightmares, as well as insomnia and headache. And this is something that we actually came to light. Again, I mentioned this first ever head-to-head trial against Chantix. We saw statistically lower rates of adverse events, and it was about 50% fewer for Cytisinicline compared to Chantix. That was statistically significant and individually significant at nausea and vomiting, insomnia, as well as abnormal dreams. So this is something we've seen comparing across trials, but to see it in the same setting was a real critical takeaway for us, because this is, again, something that is more of a consumer-focused product. And I think safety and tolerability is something that will resonate with smokers looking to quit.
Yeah, I think so too. Just the stats that you gave about how many patients aren't compliant with Chantix, it seems like there's a real opportunity here for something that's better.
And I think the other thing to keep in mind, 2 years into the Chantix launch, it got hit with a black box warning for suicidality. It took Pfizer the better part of 8 years to run a large trial to get that boxed warning removed. But what you're not able to remove is a decade of patients and physicians believing that that's an artifact that comes with the product. So we know, from our interactions with patients and physicians, that still is a barrier, that even if physicians know this may be the best option they have in the bag, that a lot of times patients just won't go near it. And so, originally when Chantix was launched, it was meant to be a $2 billion product. But the boxed warning and, just frankly, the nausea and vomiting and other side effects that come with it have really held it back. I think Pfizer did a nice job. It ended up reaching peak sales of 1.1 billion before it went generic last year. So I think Pfizer did a nice job with what they had, but also keep in mind that last year in the process when it was going generic, Pfizer also withdrew withdrew Chantix from the market globally because they found a potential carcinogen in the drug product. So it's been troubled since the outset, and I think it's interesting that at the end it was actually pulled from the market. And I think there's no sense of when, if ever, it will be back in terms of the brand.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of puts you in an interesting spot right now because of the upcoming data that's going to be read out. But I guess to touch more on the Chantix thing, the withdrawal, do you think the FDA might see Cytisinicline as potential for accelerated approval, given that this unmet need is still there, or because it's more of a consumer-driven product, they'd say that it's not unmet because there's nicotine replacement or something like that.
Yeah, so we've pursued some of this historically, and to your point, the fact that there are multiple treatment options already available,
Okay.
we haven't had success pushing that. I think, we will continue to look for avenues to get this to market quicker, and I think the dynamics have shifted here over the last year with Chantix being withdrawn. But I think that's still, probably more of a long shot that we might get, an accelerated approval. I do think that the FDA's view of products in this category was tainted with the Chantix experience and having to put a boxed warning on it. They do know that this drug will be used by millions of patients. And so I think they do want to make sure that they've got a robust data set to review for approval. And what we're hearing is that they want, roughly a safety database of 1,500 subjects, effectively discounting a lot of the historical European data, the fact that it's been on the market and used by over 20 million subjects. That's not going to be subject to their review. They want to see new data with strong safety reporting and efficacy for approval. And I think given the size of the market, I don't think that's unreasonable.
You answered my question there, because I was curious. Given there are so many investigator-led trials, I was surprised to see that the FDA still wants you guys to do these large-scale phase 3 trials. But it does make sense that they've had some rough goes with previous smoking cessation drugs, that they want to do the same kind of diligence with Cytisinicline.
Yeah, and early on we did look at getting this on the market, without doing any additional work. Frankly, look, there's been some great studies that have been run. We know this has been on the market for 20 plus years, huge safety database in Europe. Is that sufficient for approval? And unfortunately, the FDA and other regulators came back and said, no, we see this as a new chemical entity, and you're going to have to deliver anything that, that would be expected from any new drug moving forward.
Yeah. Too bad, but that's all right. There's still huge potential here. I think the one thing from an investor standpoint that I'm curious that if you could expand on is, you mentioned that Achieve is an exclusive license from Sopharm for the drug to be marketed in a bunch of countries, especially the U.S. But can you speak to the strength of the IP? The drug's been approved for a while, so can you let investors know, give them some confidence that you'll have protection once the drug goes through all of the trials and approvals, that you'll be able to have exclusivity for a certain amount of time?
Yeah, no, great question. So you're absolutely right. This is a drug that's been on the market for many, many years. So, IP can be challenging with assets like this. So what we've been doing is building up a series of patent families around formulation, method of use, as well as a number of other attributes to basically create picket fences around this. To date, we have 7 granted patents across 7 patent families and another 34 pending patents that are working their way through. So we see this as continuing to grow. I think the most important of these patents was granted last year by the USPTO. And this is on the current dose and administration that we're using in the clinic in our phase 3 trials. And this was data that came out of phase 2 work. There was a double-blind placebo-controlled trial. So it's actually a really robust data set. And I think there's precedent in the market for products like Gilenya, that is a $3 billion a year product that doesn't have composition of matter on the molecule. It's only protected by a dose and administration patent. So we feel pretty good that that is going to hold up, and that patent goes out to 2040. So we feel pretty good about where we're headed. That is an Orange Book listable patent. And so if you think of kind of the worst case scenario, we will get 5 years under Hatch-Waxman. Now with an Orange Book listed patent, there would be a 30-month stay on generics. So that would take us out to 7.5 years at the earliest. In Europe, there's up to 10 years of exclusivity in markets where it's not already approved. So again, that's kind of the low end, but we think our IP is going to hold up over the long haul. In addition, we haven't talked about it yet, but the drug is also naturally derived. So we've been sourcing it from the seeds of the laburnum tree. So there's an annual harvest process and then a robust extraction process made from from the seeds. This is not, just grinding up the seeds and putting them in a tablet. It's a very small portion of the seeds that the active ingredient is coming from. Okay. And so we see a lot of protection in our exclusive supply agreement with SoPharma. Okay. And currently, there's no feasible way to make this synthetically. It's something that we've looked into, but what nature produces, it's 100% minus an enantiomer of the drug. So you can produce a racemic mixture, but to purify it down to 100% minus is just not commercially feasible. So anyone coming in from a generics perspective would have to find access to supply, which I think is not inconsequential. So okay. We think kind of the combination of the patents as well as the supply agreement is going to protect us well into the future.
Awesome. Great. That makes me feel better. And I think there's still an open wound about what happened with Amarin, which I know there's a bunch of people in part of your leadership team who are formerly part of that company. So better to do a lot of diligence in this area before we get too excited. But it seems like you guys have really done a lot of work in this area.
Yeah, and I think our IP is being generated earlier in the development. I think a lot of what Amarin had came later stage out of their phase 3 trials, and I think that has hurt them. I think we'll still see kind of where the patents come out on their side, but we feel good about what we have.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Then from a regulatory standpoint, we've got the ORCA-2 data about to come out. Does the company see any potential for taking the ORCA-2 data to the FDA after, assuming it's positive, and seeing whether or not they would accept that and greenlight an NDA submission?
We'll certainly have those discussions depending on the strength of the ORCA-2 data set. I will note that in January of this year, we did launch the second confirmatory phase 3 trial, which is called ORCA-3. So, we looked at kind of, what we heard from the FDA originally is 2 well-controlled trials. We could have certainly waited for ORCA-2 data, had a conversation with the FDA in terms of can we get this accelerated and then move forward from there. We see that as having some risk to it. And so we took the stance that let's remove the risk. Let's get that second trial up and running now. That would shave at a minimum 6 months off the back end if it was required, and basically deliver to the FDA what they've asked for originally at our end of phase 2 meeting. Right. So that is now up and running. I think based on timing, we would anticipate data on that trial first half of next year. And that will likely be the final piece of the regulatory puzzle to move forward with an NDA in the second half of 2023. I think with that being said, we'll certainly talk to the FDA about ways to accelerate that with a strong ORCA-2 result.
Okay, awesome. And yeah, I feel like the FDA has changed so much just over the last few years that I guess you never know what you're going to get, right?
This is true. I do think we have a good tailwind. We've had a great interactions and collaborative nature with the FDA on this indication. And I think, there's been a lot going on with vaping and e-cigarettes, that the FDA is now overseeing. And I think that's played into them being very helpful with our development.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's true, actually. I think we've seen a lot of press releases around like the FDA really taking an interest in vaping and things like that, and flavored nicotine and all that. Great. So I think I want to move to, say we get approval for Cytisinicline. Is the company hoping to commercialize this on their own in the US versus EU? Do you have an interest in partnering with anybody? Have any of those discussions started?
Yeah, so we've always believed that we would need a commercial partner to really maximize the revenue potential here. I think if you look at the market today, it is sold through a primary care sales force. If you look at Chantix and others, I think for us as a small company, it's probably not the right approach to try to spin up a large sales force. So we have been, looking for potential commercial partners, whether that be big biotech or pharma, but someone that already has a primary care footprint, one that we can plug and play this product into. We think that's the right approach. I think with that being said, we do see an opportunity with this product to take it direct to consumers and leverage digital marketing as well as telehealth. Similar to what you might see today with a Hims and Hers or a Row that are currently selling generic products direct to consumers online. There is lots of companies out there that we could basically white label their platform that would help facilitate the telehealth visit and act as the back end pharmacy to ship out. And we think smoking cessation is an indication that would resonate in that sort of model. So that's something we could clearly do on our own or side by side with a partner, and would be a lower cost of capital to take that forward. But again, I think the right approach will be to have a commercial partner, that's firing on the primary care market, while perhaps we're also tackling the kind of direct to consumer angle.
Okay, great. That's good to know. So that's most of my questions. In terms of when we can expect ORCA-2 in the next month or so.
Yeah, we've been, originally we were guiding to the first half of the year. We kind of clarified that to the second quarter. So, we're cresting into the second quarter here very, very quickly. So I think it really is imminent. So I think, stay tuned for that. I think the other piece that, we haven't talked about is we did get a grant last summer from the NIH to run a phase 2 trial to help people quit nicotine e-cigarettes.
Okay.
And so we've designed a phase 2 proof of concept trial, be 150 subjects, and that will be funded in part by that NIH grant. We're currently working our way through that process right now, but we are anticipating launching that phase 2 trial by the end of the second quarter of this year. And that would likely have data, again, first half of next year. And we're pretty excited. This is an area currently there are no products indicated to help people quit e-cigarettes and vapes. Given all the other products on the market are currently generic, no one's looking into this. So we see this as a commercial opportunity that we could wholly own, and not just be an aid to smoking cessation, but treatment for nicotine addiction more broadly. So this is moving ahead quickly. And, I think when you look at the markets today, there's currently 11 million e-cigarette users in the US, approaching 100 million globally. Yet we haven't seen a real decline in the number of cigarette users. And so I think the overall markets are expanding, and I think this is the right place for us to be long term, as I think Philip Morris and others are making this shift towards a smoke-free world, which I think really means a push towards the e-cigarette versions of their products. So stay tuned on that. That's one that we're pretty excited about moving forward.
Yeah, that's great. I never really thought of it, because I would just assume that anything that would have efficacy in smoking cessation would just translate. But I guess if the doctor wants to write a prescription, the drug needs to have the indication, right?
Yeah, and it could be used off-label. It wouldn't stop that. I think we know that certain products are used for chewing tobacco and things like that. But I think to be able to go out and market it, I think would set us apart from the other products that are out there.
Yeah, that's true. It would be FDA approved for that indication, and that does have a lot of impact, I think.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, great. Well, thanks a lot, John. I appreciate your time today. People should check out the website. Is there social media you'd like to share?
We are on Twitter as well, so you can look up ACHV on that platform as well.
Awesome. And I do just want to mention, the company's trading at a $70 million market cap today, and the Chantix sales, like you mentioned, $1.1 billion. So I think there's a real opportunity here for investors. Thanks again, John, for your time. I do appreciate it. And everybody go check out Achieve Life Sciences. And we're going to wrap it up there. But thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time.